Welcome to the Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers and its monthly showcase. I'm your host, Mark Miller. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing an excellent local author, Andy Becker. Andy writes both fiction and nonfiction books with some unique subjects. Glad to have you.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Of course, you're in our hot seat again. So we're going to start out with a book that apparently created a little bit of controversy, which is The Kissing Rabbi. So is it actually based on some true facts, or is it primarily fiction?
It's totally fiction.
Okay.
It's inspired by facts that occurred in Tacoma in an Orthodox shul or synagogue, commencing in 2018 and lasting over the course of a year plus. And I think of it as my pandemic book because that's when I wrote it. I had in mind kind of the anatomy of a Me Too situation, of a real scandal. And the themes in The Kissing Rabbi concern polarization, how quickly that can happen, how a community can be divided, even when it's a small religious community, very, very quickly. And I wanted to look at how do these things happen? And my conclusion was that it's a narcissistic situation. I use a lot of humor in this. I think the biggest character that really pushed me to writing this book was probably Bill Cosby, who I grew up with. And he was such an icon, from I Spy to Dr. Huxtable to Fat Albert. I remember his comedy albums about going up the hills with a stick shift Volkswagen in San Francisco. And I loved Bill Cosby, and it just made no sense when all the allegations against his date raping and drug raping came out, as it made no sense when an Orthodox rabbi involved himself in an actual scandal. And I had a front row seat to this scandal. I live in Gig Harbor, but I had a front row seat to this scandal in Tacoma. All these things combined to inspire my writing that book.
So that's what basically led to you to begin to doing some of the additional research.
Yeah, I'm really a short story type of writer, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. So this is really a debut novel for me. And it was so gratifying to work with a wonderful editor, Ben Hirschberg. And I got the total pleasure and privilege of attending a book conference, a writer's conference called Chanticleer. And we had entered the book in a category called the Mark Twain Award, which is a category for satire and humor. And he came, and my wife came, and his wife, and we won a first place. And it was so much fun to have our spouses and my editor there, because we had really slaved and worked so hard on this novel.
Does Ben Hirschberger do other editing also? Or?
Yes, he does. He's in Tacoma. He's an ex-newspaper guy out of Louisville, Kentucky.
That's interesting.
He did feature articles and reporting and editing and copy editing. Just a wonderful person, a great friend of mine.
So he's one of those double or triple threats, because he can do both the old quote-unquote line editing as well as content editing, and story flow and plot and all that.
If somebody out there is writing and they're ready to get their book edited, and I certainly recommend editing for anybody who's going to go to publication, contact me, andybecker.life@gmail.com, or andybecker.life@gmail.com is my email.
I'll have you write that down, and I'll try to get my editor to put it on the screen.
Yeah, and my author website is andybecker.life, but contact me and I can refer Ben to you. Or refer you to Ben, and I'm sure he would take a look very seriously at your project and help you out.
So you say you're on the front row seat. Did you actually go and talk to anybody directly about this case? Or you just kind of knew it through a little bit of osmosis?
Yeah, it was a lot of osmosis. None of the characters in this book this is not a journalistic treatment of what happened.
Right.
But there are characters in this book who are inspired by people who played a role in the actual situation. One reason I picked the kissing rabbi, even though this was a scandal that hurt so many people in Tacoma, is because when you have an Orthodox situation,
right,
it's black and white. It's not like Cuomo, who said, "Oh, they moved the goalposts on me. I'm a hugger and a toucher and a feely guy. They moved the goalposts." With an Orthodox rabbi, there's no moving of the goalposts. It's totally black and white. And the other thing I did in this novel, I constructed it so it's not a he said, she said. It's very clear what the harassment consisted of.
Right. Well, since we're in a way we're talking a little bit about faith, in some church organizations such as the Roman Catholic Church, stuff like that, theoretically, if somebody did something like this, they'd lose their position, et cetera, et cetera. So in an Orthodox Jewish community, what happens to a rabbi when something like that happens?
Yeah, well, this rabbi did end up resigning his position in the real story. He did have a story that went viral that caused a lot of humiliation to himself in the real story and to his family. And it was just a very tragic circumstance for all involved in what actually happened. Was horrible, and he had to resign, and he relocated.
Did you think it had any effect on yours and some of the other people's faith?
Well, I know it did in terms of the victims. So if you're a victim and you're taken advantage of by a religious authority, that really just shatters your faith like glass being shattered. That is a tough situation. But in terms of my faith, my personal faith and my personal beliefs, my own spirituality, I think that comes from a place that is beyond any organized religious affiliation. And two of my books, The Spiritual Gardener and The Spiritual Forest, draw greatly upon my spiritual tradition, which is Judaism. This one, The Spiritual Gardener, was written in 2019 before The Kissing Rabbi, and then this is my most recent book, The Spiritual Forest.
Okay, well that's a nice lead-in, because I was going to ask you a question about the Spiritual Gardener as to, how you wound up writing the nonfiction books.
Yes, I think when you start writing, you want to write what you know about.
Right.
So what I did in The Spiritual Gardener is two things that I really felt I'd spent several decades on were gardening. I've been a gardener for years and years and years, every year. And Judaism had also been an important part of my life for decades. So I took two ancient traditions and I blended them together for the purpose of encouraging the fun. I have so much fun gardening, so much fun being outside, and I took those ancient traditions, I tried to weld in my own personal successes and failures. Anybody who's a gardener knows sometimes you're having a good tomato year, sometimes it's not good.
A bad tomato,
And so I put those together. This lady whose photograph, she's not on this one, excuse me. This lady, Abigail Drapkin, who you can see at the bottom of the book, did beautiful color illustrations. So it turns out being a wonderful gardening gift book intended to inspire gardening, intending to get people outside.
So you have two.
Yes. So what happened?
Here.
What happened is this. This was the first edition, Mark, and I won an award for this one too. But when we came out with the Spiritual Forest, we decided, because this is also a illustrated book but with photographs, to make it a series. And so we wanted to conform the covers. So you can get this book, The Spiritual Gardener, in either cover. They're both available.
Which brings an excellent subject about writing, in that people don't, there are some writers who don't pay attention to developing their covers. And so they'll go online and find some free photo, and, oh, this looks great. Well, maybe they need to have somebody step back and take a look at it, like you said, because sometimes you need, especially if you write more than one book, you're going to need to have the covers also tell a little bit of a story. And so people know by looking at the covers also the basic subject matter of your book. Like, everybody knows you got the rabbi on this one, Kissing Rabbi. Well, then these people look at those and they go, oh, okay, I understand where he's coming from.
Exactly. And all of these books had professional designers for the covers. I actually did something kind of fun on the Kissing Rabbi. I narrowed down some proposed covers to 2.
Right.
And those were my finalists. And I have an email list, which you can sign up for on my author website. And I sent the 2 covers out to my email list. I use a program called MailChimp.
Oh, yeah.
And I let people vote on which cover. And it was pretty evenly divided. And basically, I picked the cover that is depicted here that we used because it more reflected the essence of the book.
Right.
And also because I have 2 adult sons and an adult daughter-in-law, and they were very adamant that I pick that cover.
Okay.
So for peace in the family,
there you go.
I picked that cover.
Well, I had no problem at Barbecue to You selling one of your copies of The Spiritual Gardener, because an individual came up and started asking about nonfiction books. And he said, well, I'm kind of into philosophy and stuff. I says, aha. And so I showed him that book, and he immediately, oh, this is great. Yeah, this is just what I'm looking for. And so, because he was specifically looking for kind of that subject matter. And then, of course, by looking at your book and reading the back, he can tell exactly what it's about.
In The Spiritual Gardener, I'll tell you, when we go to the Gig Harbor Art Fair or the Blackberry Festival here in Bremerton, which is so much fun, that's always the most popular book. People come by. There's so many gardeners in the world. This is not exactly a how-to book. It's more of an inspirational, fun book about gardening, and people like it. People really do like it. It's my best commercial type of book.
What has helped you most in developing your storytelling and your book writing?
I teach a class for TCC, Mark, on writing.
Okay.
And it's called the 11 Commandments of Writing.
Right.
And what I've concluded from that class, this is a class for aspiring writers.
Right.
Not to drive themselves crazy. And what you really need to be a writer are 2 things. You need a space to do your writing, and you need time. And if you have those 2 things, and you have the desire, and you're willing to work and grind it out, you can get your writing done. But you really do need those 2 things.
And when you write, would it be safe to say, you write coming from inside you rather than worrying about, it's just going to sell, or is somebody going to like this?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
100%. And I've had people tell me, when this Spiritual Gardener came out, you should just be the Spiritual Gardener. You should be everything you do should be a gardening book.
Okay.
But I'm at a place in my life where I want to write what I want to write. For example, cracking an egg is my second book that came out. That's a love letter to Mom. And those are childhood stories about growing up in the 60s. They're standalone stories. They're really funny. They're universal in nature. And you can see from the table of contents the different subject matters, like there's one called Lessons, about taking clarinet lessons. And back in the 60s, we had to go wear a suit and tie and go to the ballroom to take dance lessons that all the kids in 5th and 6th grade hated. There's the chapter on my first 10-speed bicycle that got stolen. My mom was a hero and found the kid who stole it, and we went over to his house and got the bike back. There's a story about how we were playing a game in the yard with my older brother, and I knocked his 2 front teeth out purely by accident. There's a story about how my mother served fish for dinner the day my sister's goldfish that she won at a fair, and was the only of the 3 kids who kept this goldfish alive for a decade. It was the day, yes, it was the day that, quote, Goldie passed away and got flushed away, and my mom just happened by coincidence to be making some fish for that evening's dinner. So they're funny stories, they're childhood stories that people can get behind. I have a fellow author who got COVID, and she had that book and she hadn't read it yet. And with COVID, she couldn't concentrate, she felt horrible, she was really sick. She called me up and she started reading the book, and so she could read 1 or 2 little stories at a time.
There you go.
And she was so complimentary. It just really, her having that experience made writing that book worth it for me.
Good. So then how do you, what's your basic approach to your writing? Do you write daily? Do you have a specific schedule like some writers have?
Well, with a broken arm, I'm not doing too much for a few more weeks. This is an immobilizer that I broke my arm. I have to wear this for 6 weeks, so it's very hard.
Right.
I have a stand-up desk. I have a basement that's my sacred writing quiet space with a stand-up desk, and I like to do my writing first thing. And I have the ability to do that now. I'm a very, very part-time Kitsap attorney. I have a very wonderful career here in Kitsap County, and I haven't done direct representation as a lawyer now for about 6 years. So typically when I'm writing, which is not every day of the year, in the summer months I don't like to do writing, but we have a long winter, a long, wet, cold, foggy, moisture-filled winter. So I really like to get up, have my coffee, do several hours. I feel like past several hours, I'm so intense about the writing that I do, past 2 or 3, maybe 4 hours, I'm at a point of diminishing returns. I'm almost numb mentally for the rest of the day if I'm really producing. I'll have typically chapters in mind, and that's the form of where I'm going. When I did the novel, it really flowed out of me, and I'm so grateful to my editor, because it was about 84,000 words, and the final version is 63,000 words.
So you cut back quite a bit.
He not only cut back a lot, he excised the entire final chapter. And I said, but there are good jokes in there. He said, doesn't matter, you don't need that. Get rid of that chapter. And we did.
So how do you publish your books and self-publish?
So I'm all self-published. This book, I actually went to the San Francisco Writers Conference and had an agent very, very interested in this book. And he was shopping it around and finally gave up after about 6 months. But everything here is self-published, everything's available. at your favorite online bookstore, my author website. Of course, that behemoth Amazon is where most of my books sell. And then I'm here locally in Kitsap at the festivals. I had a fun time this year at the Blackberry. I had a fun time at the Olalla Music Festival. I have fun at the Gig Harbor Art Festival. I did Peninsula High School this year. So it's nice to meet people face to face and sign an autograph and talk to people.
What kind of dogs are Nova and Splash?
Okay, great question. So Nova is our newest dog. She's a Portuguese water dog. She has tons of personality. She's a little bit neurotic, but extremely loving. And then she's more my wife's dog. And then Splash is, this is a long name, Nova Scotia Duck Tail Retriever. And they're retrievers, they're really smart. She's a beautiful dog. People look at this dog and say, oh, what beautiful eyes. And she will chase the ball forever. And the two dogs get along great. Good. And we love our dogs. And so that's Nova and Splash.
Okay.
You bet.
And you're also affiliated with Gig Harbor Writers Group?
I'm affiliated with them, and I'm supportive of them. I have been known to use my pickup truck to schlep the tables and chairs to different venues and help put up a tent and volunteer where I can to help out when I can. And then I'm also teaching writing at TCC, which I think I mentioned.
Right. Any last quick suggestions for writers other than just write?
Yeah, I think reading is really, really important. That you're reading a lot, and when you're going to do your writing, to have some idea where you're going with it, to have some sort of plan, and then, as Henry Miller said in his 11 Commandments of Writing, stick to the plan. You can vary from time to time, but try and stick to the plan and get one project done before you leapfrog into another.
Well, Andy, I'm really glad that you managed to come here to Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers, so I really appreciate you being here. Kitsap Literary Writers have been interviewing and filming various creatives in conjunction with Bremerton Kitsap Access Television for several years. I want to thank all of our viewers for tuning in to Bremerton Kitsap Access Television and viewing this Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers production. I also wish to thank the BCAT staff. They work tirelessly to broadcast this, make this broadcast a success. This broadcast interview she'll be coming up this next month on Channel 3 and Astound Cable or Channel 12 on Comcast. Keep in touch with our Facebook pages for updates on what creative we will be interviewing in the future, any events any authors and artisans will attend in the community. Look for the yearly Blackberry Festival in Kitsap County Fair and Stampede. CLAW is always there. We at CLAW have a mission statement to help our authors and artists become known to the public and expose their artistic endeavors to the residents of Kitsap County and the world. Thus, we plan to continue this endeavor as long as the BCAT staff and the viewing public support us. CLAW charges no dues. Only fees involving venue costs are ever requested. CLAW exists for the artists and writers to help with marketing, distribution, and publicity. We meet every month on the first and third Wednesdays at Sparrow's Pizza on Kitsap Way in Bremerton, Washington, usually around 7 p.m., though I get there earlier. Also, for filmmakers and actors, we have a related group, Kitsap Peninsula Filmmakers, which meets on the second Tuesday of every month at the Family Pancake House on Wheaton Way in Bremerton, also 7 o'clock in the evening. Everyone is welcome. We're not the only group out there. There are lots of other independent writers and critique groups in Western Washington. My publisher, the Blue Forge Group, Blue Forge Press, is a 503c3 nonprofit that encompasses films, publishing, comics, music, and artwork, and strongly supports the arts in Kitsap County area. And they're the ones that also help us put this show and upload it on YouTube and help with the editing. Blue Forge Press has been instrumental in helping me and others publish their works. In closing, I hope everyone has a pleasant day and productive and fascinating year. Until next time, I'm Mark Miller with Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers in conjunction with Bremerton Kitsap Access Television and Blue Forge Group. Good day. And thanks for coming, Andy.
Thank you, Mark
Appreciate
Miller.
it. Yep.
Appreciate you. Thank you.